happiness here as something that's really meaningful. So it's important to you, but it doesn't have to be like, hard or, deep or anything. It can be also very fun, but it's something that really creates happiness for you, like in a very lasting, important way. All right. So for me, my name is Jennifer Aaker, and I would say, you think I would have thought this through. Wholeness. Okay.
My name is Maggie. Want the last name too?
Yeah. No, Maggie. That's fine.
Okay. Presence.
Mm-hmm.
My name's Tyler, and mine would be a quiet house.
You must have kids.
Michelle and Freedom.
Michelle Freedom.
Jim, and my relationship with Michelle.
Oh. She said freedom. You guys look very holiday-ish together. I like that. Yeah. Keep going.
My name is Beth, and I'd say a day in Yosemite.
Yosemite. All right.
My name is Barbara, and I'd say I like doing things for other people.
Okay. Great. Give it.
Susan and activity.
Lori and my tortoise Hercules.
Oh, your tortoise. I love it.
Megan, healthy family.
Leslie,
Connection. Great.
Be volunteering.
Volunteering. And in the back?
Sherry,
Grandchildren.
grandchildren.
Oh, yeah.
Elaine. Just sighing.
Yeah, we'll call that breathing. How's that? Deep breathing.
Karen, I'm sorry I didn't hear what we were saying.
Oh, it's just one word of like happiness, like what really brings you happiness. Pets.
Rich grandchildren.
Rich branch?
We're only 5 and 3, so
I'm Kim. I'd say the roasted cauliflower orchestra.
Oh, yeah. I'm hungry all of a sudden. Nice.
My name is Pam, and I would say my husband brings me.
Oh.
I'm Rosemary, and just being upright.
That's great. Upright. Yes.
Virginia, swimming.
Swimming. Mom, what about you?
Kay, you.
Aww. She was forced to say that. People. We're just going to say my sisters.
the 3 of you.
I know, that's true. That's true. Joyce?
Joyce, Kay.
Aww. See, they're all so smart here. Yeah.
Sunday paper and a cup of coffee.
Oh, that's good.
Oh, Ron.
Ron.
Yeah.
Robin, spirituality.
Ruth, yoga.
Christopher, I would say grandchildren, but it's been said a couple times.
That's
So
okay.
I would say grandchildren, but nature.
Okay.
Martha, and sitting in my backyard.
My name is Kimberly, and meditating.
Amy and massage.
I put 2 because they go together. Travel and Judy Kirkpatrick.
Oh.
I came in late. What are we doing?
Oh, it's just your name and something that brings you a lot of happiness.
Paul Derby. Volunteering.
Terry, high school friends.
Carol, being involved.
Sherry, purpose.
Alan, being a servant of God.
Great. And did I miss someone over here? Okay.
Aaron, hiking with Pat.
Pat. Hanging out with Aaron and my family.
Oh.
The rest of my family. And I'm Mark. Sex.
Sex. Someone's time in this group. We got a lot of nature meditation. Fantastic. Did I miss anyone? Anyone's name? Jennifer, what about you? What's your word?
Family.
Okay. All right. So we could end this whole thing early and just have you guys grab that word and like frame it, put sparkles on it, and bring it home with you tonight because there's research to show that when you even just have that one concept, that front and center as a screensaver or whatever, it actually has this temporary boost on your overall happiness even throughout the day. So it's already been a big win, you know? All right, so I'm gonna talk a little bit about this concept of rethinking happiness. Hey, Jen, will you help me? Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
All right, so what I'm gonna do over the course of this next, I don't know, like 40-ish minutes, 45-ish minutes, and then we'll kind of do a little Q&A or whatever you wanna do, is ask you to take out this piece of paper that, is it Mark? Gave you, and just all you have to do is, if you're missing a piece of paper, hold your hand up, and we'll get you one. So we need 1, 2, 3, yeah, maybe 3. So I'm gonna ask a bunch of questions. Is that okay, Elaine? Am I in the right way? All right, so I'm gonna tell you a little bit about myself. I'm also going to ask you a bunch of questions in this, and so what I find is when you're writing down the answers to the questions for you versus the people in our study, a lot of the studies connect more deeply, and so you're more likely to remember it, apply it, etc. So this is a lot of work on rethinking happiness. So I've studied the area of happiness and meaning and purpose for a long time, maybe 10, 15 years. I think I was really inspired, frankly, from my mom and grandma. And as many of you know, Aaker has a lot of really remarkable qualities. One of them that you may not know about is her mom. So Mabel was this incredible person. When mom was 4, her dad died of cancer, and Mabel basically raised Kay as you know, a single mom during the Depression. She after she lost her husband of cancer, she went off and she did a Dale Carnegie class, and she learned all of these tools on actually really bringing yourself up. She became a businesswoman. She ran a farm. She was highly successful financially. I think she put all 3 of us basically through college. My dad's mom also, dad also helped, but it was a really incredible story about a few things in life. One is that Mabel was so resilient, and when things were unhappy and in fact tragic, she created meaning out of them. And a second thing that I admire so much about her is how she raised my mom, which was basically being of service. Like that's basically your goal in life, is to be of service. And that infiltrated in my life in really important ways, even when I was younger. And so even though I don't think ever be half the person my mom is in terms of her service and impact, it certainly impacted me and what I study and what I research. Now, the interesting thing about happiness as a topic is that often what we think drives our happiness doesn't. Now, it's highly ironic that I'm giving this talk with you guys who have it all really, basically you should be teaching me about the importance of meaning and purpose and how you use your time in ways that are very specific. But I'll just go through still a few personal anecdotes and behavioral research, and then also ask you a few questions. So maybe a few new insights might pop to you today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, at least for others, how they might rethink their approach to happiness. What is this new destination? What is this journey that we're on? And what might you do on Monday based on this research? So a lot of individuals have studied happiness, certainly over the years, and there are correlations with when people say that they are happy. There's correlations with the degree to which they say, with behavior, with job performance, customer service. The way to read this graph is on the right-hand side, going that way, there's a higher index. So if you say I'm very happy, you're much more likely to report, to give others better service. Other people say that you're a better work partner, that you're more creative. And when you say you're happier than people who report less, there's reduced job burnout, decreased turnover intentions. People are physically healthier when they believe that they're happy. So we know that happiness is certainly a good thing, and there's certainly no shortage of books that celebrate this idea of happiness. And yet there's this hitch, which is, it's it's a shit show out there, people. People are dying. Like, no, you don't know about this, but trust me, they are. You know, political and world events are often scary. Even looking at the news, there's relationships with going on to the news and actually decreased levels of happiness. There's also, you know, all of our kids and grandkids are on phones, including ourselves. And there's also increased levels of the more you're on social platforms like Facebook or Snapchat, the less happy you are, because of all these individuals that are doing these things and also the difficulty in getting these real connections that you guys all do in your day-to-day lives when you're increasingly in digital formats. So it's very hard to be happy, but the good news is our contention is happiness is miserable, and I'm going to tell you why. So despite all of that data that I just showed you that happiness brings positive things, the idea is that as we aim for happiness and happiness becomes a goal, as many of you know, we get less happy. So happiness is obviously a positive thing, but we can't aim for it, so how do we reconcile that? So a couple of traps of happiness before I dive in and give you a few questions. The first is, we really think we know what makes us happy, but we don't. So intuitively, we really believe that many of these things on this graph, and this is pulled together from discrete literatures on happiness, would make us happy, but the way to read this graph is things make us happier than we think, or things make us less happy than we think. So religion, most people think it brings a lot of happiness, but it brings less than we think. Now to the degree that you serve others and are volunteering, that brings a lot of lasting happiness, but just merely showing up or going to church, temple, synagogue, just going doesn't bring as much happiness as people think. Education, once you get your PhD or your MBA or whatever degree, you are happy for 3 days and then you go back to baseline. People think that youth is associated with happiness, and yet a lot of research shows that as we age, we actually get happier, especially after 50. So there's this like awkward 40 to 50-year-old time frame where parents are juggling kids in life, and there you're basically miserable. But after you come out of that, and you're like, oh, my kid's getting out of the challenging place that they are, because we're really only as happy as our least happy child, if we have children, or our least happy pet, if we have pets. And so it's kind of curvilinear, but there's really a positive relationship between happiness and age, much more so than we think. I'll talk about how it shifts. Money, and you've seen this data, over and above a certain threshold doesn't bring as much happiness as we think. After we have the first facelift, then we immediately want the second facelift, so that doesn't bring as much as we think. Self-esteem does. The ability to control your time does. The quality of your relationships clearly does, and that's what's so special, I think, about Hospice of the East Bay. The quality of your relationships is just remarkable. Dancing does, volunteering does, and humor does. So I'm particularly honored to be here with you, who have made your life, part-time or full-time of service. And even though you might be interested in this topic, I can see from your smiling faces that you're already at this place of happiness. The second one is we think happiness is a fixed and stable construct. We're either happy or we're not happy, but in fact it's not. It's quite dynamic, much more than we think. So this is research that, our data set that I've drawn on with Sep Kamvar, who collected it. And Sep, and Jonathan Harris, his co-author, wrote a computer algorithm that combed the blogosphere for all mentions of I feel and I am feeling. And what they could do, this is 12 million data points collected over 3 years globally. And so what people are blogging about is I feel happy and excited about graduation coming up, or I feel, unhappy and, depressed, my pet just died. And so we can semantically scrape all of that data to figure out what people are saying when they say that they're happy, and what they're feeling, and what they're also mentioning in these sentences. And because blog-based data has the opportunity to get demographics associated with it, this is age across different feelings. So we start out simple. Raise your hand if you have an 11 to 14-year-old kid or grandkid, nephew or niece. A couple of you. So when you say, how are you feeling, they say, okay. What'd you do today? Nothing. All day long, did nothing. So there's no rich emotional lexicon associated with them. But we soon fill up with angst. From 15 to 18, they feel very angsty and very uncertain, not knowing themselves or others, their social situation or standing. When they do feel happy, it's equated to excitement. So when they say, I feel happy, it means I feel excited, which is a very angsty form of happiness. And feelings of confinement around 20, they start to feel like not really known, alone, confined, bounded by society and norms. Until we leave those feelings behind to conquer the world. Around 25, they start to feel like they can conquer the world, and the allure of money, power, and status feels within their grasp. And so happiness now is equated to that feeling of more power or attainability. And gradually trading ambition for balance. Around 30, they start talking about needing to be more balanced. And then their bodies at 35, they've gone downhill. So they obviously, like surprisingly, shockingly to everyone. So they need to get healthy physically again. And then their children around 30, 31, 35, where again, they're only as happy as their least happy child. An evolving sense of connectedness for which they feel grateful, calm, and blessed. And people often ask, like, what, do people die at 60? What's going on here? It's just that the sample size decreases so much that we don't have it in the data set as much, but don't worry, death is not imminent. But what's important here is that the meaning of happiness shifts from excitement to contentment. And there's these other nuanced shifts that happen as well. So discovery is the promise of excitement, and then you move to conquering the world or pursuit, where the feeling of power, money, or status defines happiness. And then you're in this mindset of balance, where you're aiming and making decisions, optimizing for this feeling of alignment across health and work and family, so that all of these different domains of yourself can feel supported. And then you move to impact, where you realize it's not about me, it's about others, and it's about this legacy or this meaning and significance that I can create in the world. And then we move to savoring, where we're not future focused, we're really present. We're focused on sighing or meditation or swimming, and the meaning of happiness is about savoring and contentment. And so they are, again, not sort of charging ahead, but really appreciative of the here and now, and time expands and people are more present oriented. Now, it's not just linear. It's not like you go from 18 to 78 and you go like that. I mean, Mark loves sex. What's going on with this 18-year-old, right? But it's that you can take on these different mindsets, these different parts of your life. So, for example, we'll give 18-year-olds, who typically define happiness as excitement, a simple task to breathe deeply, focus on the present for 5 minutes. So you guys are going to do that with me, all right? So pretend you're 18 and breathe deeply. Focus on the present for 5 minutes. So in and out, try and count to 8 if you can. Now you guys are going to be my 18-year-olds, and you're going to breathe normally, or you could breathe rapidly. So you guys got the easy job. There's like half of you who are like, no way I'm going over there.
Is there an app on the phone that we can use?
Oh, there is actually. There's
No, I'm
insight
joking.
meditation. Oh, okay. There's so many. Insight meditation works great. And so we'll come back at a later point in time after 5 minutes. So you guys can keep on going with your deep breathing. And we'll ask these 18-year-olds, do you want some peppermint refreshing tea, or do you want some chamomile calming tea? And you guys will pick what? Everyone wants the peppermint. It's a huge effect size. And then we'll ask these 18-year-olds after the 5 minutes, do you want the peppermint refreshing tea or the calming chamomile tea? And you pick what? So it's really a big, again, effect size. So we can have these 18-year-olds act like 68-year-olds. And even with the yogic quick breathing, we can have the 68-year-old define happiness in much more exciting ways. Again, when you start thinking about the future and you're excited to go traveling with your partner or whatever it is in the future, being more future oriented and having that kind of higher arousal system going on. So again, it's not just linear. You can make these shifts of what you're defining as happiness even in something as short as 5 minutes. And think about it, like how many of you guys, when you wake up in the morning, you're kind of excited? All right, and then how many of you, when you go to bed at night, you're feeling kind of, if good, calm and kind of more peaceful? Yeah, so there's several people who just kind of go throughout the day, you know, modulating this meaning of happiness. And that's really powerful, because if you can redefine happiness for yourself, you know you're making choices with more intent, and you're also able to modulate your choices to a greater degree. But we often go through life just feeling like our happiness is like a predetermined state, or the meaning of happiness is a predetermined state. And yet what we're showing is that it's much more flexible than we think, and something as small as a breathing exercise can shift it. All right, so if the meaning of happiness suggests that it's malleable and we often are pursuing it, this helps us explain why hedonic adaptation happens, and that why we kind of keep chasing this sort of elusive feeling, or after you get your PhD 3 days later, you want to get another PhD because we're hedonically caught up. And our work is suggesting that our meaning of happiness is shifting, and that's one of the reasons that we're rarely satisfied and we kind of lure for the next thing. In our work, we show that as you try and design for happiness instead of aiming for happiness, those individuals that are really, and you're going to hate me briefly for this, we're going to talk about the destination and the journey. It sounds trite, and there's many quotes to support it, but our work is showing that what esoteric philosophers have said for eons, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Earl Nightingale talks about the destination and journey. Most of this is about the journey and not the destination, but our work shows it's really both. My favorite is Drake, the singer, who says sometimes it's the journey that teaches you a lot about your destination. So the question is, how do we navigate both the journey and the destination? So we'll talk first about the destination, or your North Star. So we have this class called Rethinking Purpose. And so all of these Stanford undergrads and MBAs take it. A lot of DCI fellows, these are Distinguished Career Institute fellows that apply to Stanford and actually get in as 50, 60, 70-year-olds after they've kind of done their thing. But they really want to take classes again and be a student. So they come to Stanford and they're a student with everyone else for a year. And a lot of them take my Rethinking Purpose class. So it's really fun because I can teach 18 to 68-year-olds, like all over the map. And what we do in the beginning of that class is ask them, you know, what actually provides meaning and purpose for them. And we find that oftentimes that North Star, that destination, feels very elusive, but it doesn't have to be. And so we dive into this research about what does it mean to be anchored on meaning and purpose. And this is not unfamiliar territory for most of you. Certainly those of you who are religious, this is the way you were brought up, or the way you live your life naturally. But for these Stanford undergrads who aren't always trained in certain deep feelings of connectedness with something bigger than themselves, this is a process that they really go through. So in one of our studies, we try and pull apart what does it mean to bring happiness versus what creates meaning. And these two constructs are both very positive. They correlate at about 0.5, 0.6, 0.7. And so teasing apart, like what brings you happiness versus what brings you meaning, is actually pretty hard to do. But we ask large sample sizes of people, are you living a happy life? Are you living a meaningful life? And we can basically create an analysis that pulls out the positive covariance between those. And so we're just looking at those individuals that say, I feel really happy, but not a lot of meaning in my life, and a lot of meaning, but not a lot of happiness in my life. So we look at those individuals and say, how are they rating on all these different other choices, etc. The biggest difference between the happiness not meaning people and the meaning not happiness people is that these guys say that they want to feel good, they like to feel good always, they like to feel as good as possible, and they don't want to feel negative. These individuals say, yeah, I like to feel good too, but I also feel negative sometimes, and you know, life isn't always like a walk in the park. The other big difference is these guys say that they really like to get gifts and take or be self-oriented. That's what they describe themselves as. There's no putting them down. They're very fine with that. And these individuals say that they're very other-oriented. They can read the room. They go to where people are. These individuals say that what they feel is often fleeting and they move without control across different emotional states. These individuals are very anchored on the past, the present, and the future. They know why they're doing what they're doing to a far greater degree than the individuals anchored on happiness. Now, in some studies, they ask individuals, okay, we're going to create like a happiness mindset for you, so do one thing today that makes you happy, and then for the other set of subjects, do one thing today that creates meaning. And then these individuals will track these individuals, and then even 3 months later, this individual group, the meaning mindset group, report less negative feelings, which is quite ironic, right? Because the meaning mindset people shouldn't be fearful of negative emotions. And yet these individuals say that they're typically happier than the individuals who are going to create happiness. So when they're aiming to create happiness, they're less happy than the meaningfulness people. And they really only do things differently in one way, which is these individuals are having much richer social interactions. They're not just spending more time with their partner or kids or pets. They're spending time in ways that make them feel so connected to others. And having watched Mom at hospice for 35 years and then teaching before that, I get it. I absolutely get it. And I'm so in awe of what you do every day. I mean, even Jennifer, in her honor of my mother, I mean, forget all the other people you help. Assuming you help other people. You know, just that connectedness with my mom and, you know, and the connectedness I see with Joyce and my mom and all of you. And she's so proud of this. I mean, it's no wonder why, A, you work here, B, why the relationships are so deep and important, and why happiness flocks to this place. Also, when you have this higher sense of meaning and purpose, and therefore happy, but you're anchored on meaning and purpose, there's all these health benefits, higher levels of good cholesterol, healthier weight, better sleep. There's actually even reduced cognitive decay and Alzheimer's for individuals that feel anchored on meaning and purpose. And you guys probably remember the Ellen Langer story where individuals in older age homes, when given just a plant to take care of, lived longer. So this idea of like, I belong to something, or I need to take care of something, I need to help something, drives all of these health benefits. It also drives all of these productivity benefits, which corporate America is really lacking. There's some research to show by Gallup, large data sets, that when people are asked, do you know the mission or the meaning or the purpose of your company, 70 to 80% worldwide, and definitely in the United States, say they don't. And of the people that say they do, 80% say they don't personally care about the mission. And there's a really lovely book, I encourage you to get it, from Jeff Pfeffer, that talks about how corporate America and corporations in general are literally killing us. Because that lack of meaning, that lack of connectedness, and you don't like your boss or a coworker, you don't have someone to go have coffee with, and those two things combine, the social connections that aren't always thriving in the workforce and the lack of meaning and purpose, create this horrible moment of crisis that you guys don't have to go through. But this is really important. So the question is, when they come to the class, what am I going to do if I want to have more meaning and purpose? And I always ask people who, and I'll ask you guys too, I'm curious, how many of you felt like you were born with a sense of purpose? Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Can I just ask a few people what it was and why? Maybe I'll start over there because you didn't do your happiness word.
I always knew I wanted to be a nurse, even when I was little.
Oh, fascinating. Someone else, a couple others.
I had a role model to look up to in my parents who valued connections and lives with purpose way more than ambitious lives.
Yeah. Oh, fascinating.
7 younger siblings to take care of.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like, you know, everyone worries about the responsibility that you face, but that actually created all this meaning and purpose. Others? Yeah.
I knew that I was here to make the world better in some way. My parents were my models.
Yeah. And you were just trying to kind of find that way, but that compass was connected to you. Any other examples? Yeah.
I had 7 older siblings.
No way, you guys should hang out more.
We were spoiled.
Yeah, I was spoiled. But I knew I wanted to raise children the way my mother raised all of
Yeah.
us.
Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. Yes.
I just feel like being blessed, as many of us are, that it's our opportunity and purpose really to help others. And
Yeah.
I'm not here just for my own.
Yeah.
happiness.
Do you feel like you always had that feeling, even when you were young? Yeah.
Probably more as I got older, because when you're young, you're so self-absorbed. But
Yeah.
a lot of it's through my faith and religion. Just
Yeah.
it's not all about me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I thought when I was very young that I wanted to be a saint.
Yeah.
I thought, what other goal would you reach for?
Yeah. You get in earlier. You get to say hi to everyone as they're coming into the pearly gates. Oh, I love it.
You know, a lot of this stuff was modeled for me, because I grew up in a Catholic family.
Yeah.
And you helped out at church, you helped out at school, my dad was active in the Holy Name Society, and you always were doing something with and for somebody else.
Yeah.
It's just, you know,
Yeah.
that was life.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Oh, I see down there.
Well, this is really a very enlightening and interesting dialogue. I literally have never been with a group before where more than 5% raise their hand. You know, never. Then that was like 40% of you. Now you might all be misremembering when you were young. I'm just kidding. But that idea of religion and role modeling and seeing your parents and your siblings and just kind of feelings of like, why wouldn't you be a saint if you are a nurse, if you could be, is really, really beautiful. A lot of my students don't have that feeling, again, 5% maybe. And they really think that it's something that they don't want, perhaps. But so we have to give them a sense of like, this is easier. Like we have to basically give them your parents, give them your synagogues and churches and temples and whatnot. And so one of the powerful tools that we do is these things called moonshots. And I worked at Google X for quite some time as an advisor, and they have these corporate moonshots, like, we're going to do the loon, and loon's going to give activity, this balloon's going to give, internet activity, connectivity to impoverished nations and cultures. And what we did was we took that and we adapted it for the more individual moonshots. So we defined them really as the sort of juxtaposition or intersection of these three things: passions and what you're really good at and what the world needs, which so many of you already have, but a lot of the students don't. And I share a personal story often about, I'm a marketing professor, and as my dad, another marketing professor, knows, I don't really like marketing. I was very lackluster, but I love statistics and I love research and I love the ability to have control over my time, and I really wanted to be a good mother and a good partner. And I thought, I was really worried that if I did my real dream, which is to be an oncologist, that I wouldn't achieve all of my goals because I would forego maybe even getting married or having kids, because I'd be sort of focused so much on being an oncologist and really heads down. So I became a marketing professor, even though I don't really care about the topic, which is unfortunate. But and on Sundays, I'd feel really sort of lonely and empty and meaningless and depressed every Sunday for a long time. And I would try and I'd talk myself out of it, like talk to friends what was going on with me. I'd have these 6th grade days and then plummet. And I think over time, well then I met and fell in love with Andy and had kids, and our Sundays got really busy, who was like a simple day of peace or whatever, sleeping, is that you? Yes, I hear you. And so, but what I realized was, and then I was working at Berkeley about, 8 years ago, and one of my students shared a story with me, Robert Chalwani, my student, about his best friend Samir Bhatia, who was his best friend, who was diagnosed with leukemia right at the beginning of my class, and he couldn't find a match in the bone marrow registry to help him. And he shares this story about how he harnessed the power of story and social networks to actually find him a match. And he told me the story, and I'm weeping when I'm hearing this story in class. It was really embarrassing. And I went home that night and I said, Andy, to my husband, like, we should do something about Robert's story. We should, teach others how to harness the power of social networks and story in order to make change in the world. You know, I knew I wanted to make change, and I didn't think marketing professor was gonna do it. Fancy Stanford people already making a ton of money, don't need to market better. And Andy, to his benefit, really resonated with that, and he actually had this very high power job at Dolby, the sound system, and he quit his job like 2 months later, and we wrote a book together and a case and a class, and made it all free and open for anyone to use the framework of how do you make change happen in the world. And I never wanted to write a book. I to this day, Samir Bhatia, who actually ended up passing on at the end of my class, even though Robert found a perfect match for him, through getting 25,000 people in the bone marrow registry in 11 weeks. We wanted to use our book to create legacy for him. And what was interesting about this process, which was really kind of my moonshot, I could leverage what the world needs. I thought was to make a dent in cancer. That was really more what I needed, and I didn't do that effectively, but I needed it because I wasn't the oncologist. But I could leverage my unique strengths, which is a behavioral psychologist at Stanford, you know, focused on meaning, and my passion, which was to really help others in ways that even if I didn't know them. And so we did this, we created this book, and it was really a moment for me where I realized, oh my gosh, I do have a moonshot. And then all of a sudden, my Sundays, while I was in this process, all of a sudden became so full and joyous and rich. And it wasn't always happy, but it was definitely meaningful. The other piece of this was when individuals, including myself, find that moonshot and take the risk to go write a book, even though that's not necessarily an ambitious or smart thing to do for them, it's just they're pulled to it, is that your metrics of success change. So we stopped measuring how much money we were making because, you know, Andy quit his job, so we were making, you know, half. But we were really inspired because of 3 reasons. One is we could tell our kids during, all of you guys, we were trying to be these role models for our kids, and yet we weren't serving, we weren't moving to Darfur. We weren't doing all these things. We were going to church, you know, sometimes. You know, my mom is working at a hospice and serving others, but what were Andy and I really doing? And so by us publishing this book together and creating this dragonfly effect, which is the meaning of transitions and born again feelings and feelings of happiness and meaning, that even if something happened to us in our life, they would see a dragonfly and know that we were role modeling for them, that we were anchored on meaning and purpose, that we were a couple who was doing that, and that's what they were going to do too. So they didn't get a choice either. They spent every summer not doing swim team. They built out their own little businesses, found the charity that they wanted, and donated money for that charity over 5 years. And it was just a really great metric of success. Instead of how much money are we making, it was much more, you know, how rich are these stories that the kids are living, and how much do we feel like we're role modeling, at least to some degree. So I make the students do that, and they always go, oh my gosh, it's not going to be, my moonshot's not going to be to make a dent in cancer. It might be something super small, like to take care of my turtle or whatever it is. And so we always have to remind them it could be really small, just changing one person's life might be a moonshot. So I'm going to ask you that too, if you could just think about the next 5 or 10 years of your life, if you would write down a glimmer or 2 of a moonshot for you. Now, many of you aren't going to have anything to say because you're already living it, but go with me. Think of yourself as a grandparent or a parent or a spiritual, you know, someone connected to spiritual practice, or think of yourself as an athlete, or think of yourself as a friend. Just think of different parts of your life and write down a couple of glimmers of moonshots that you'd like to do in the next 5 to 10 years. While you're writing them down, I'd love to ask a few people if they wouldn't mind sharing one that came to them. Yeah.
It's create and maintain a community of people, not just seniors, for rides, getting each other to and from the doctor, maybe places, because not all of us have family nearby or family who's able to drive us.
And is that what you're doing now, or that's not what you're doing right now?
It's sort of in the startup stages. I have agreements with all sorts of people. Call me, you call me, and, you know, don't call it Uber if you don't have to. I'll give you a ride or help you out.
Oh, how powerful. And so it's so helpful because once you crystallize this as a moonshot, now you'll create the time, or it'll influence your decision making. Other examples of anyone else who wrote something?
I started it and I failed, but it's fine because I'm okay. I think it's gonna still work. But I did a baby brigade when I lived away from my family. I was in Chicago. I had my kids. We had no family, so we started going to like a SNP, and we just put our babies on people's laps, and it was magical. And so then when now, many years later, 20-something years later, I'm working more with seniors, and then I tried to get, but I don't know any mummies. Like I haven't been in this community that long, so I'm trying to get a baby, like a group of babies.
Oh my gosh, if we had more time, we would do a session. Jennifer or mom or someone, you should do this later. You go and you make everyone share the glimmers, and then everyone puts on a yellow sticky. Like I know a mother's group, you know, that you could prototype with. And so I'll just put it out there. If you hear anything, please, tonight, email, what's your name? Leslie. Email Leslie. Does everyone know Leslie's email? What's your email? All right. Jennifer, you'll help put out a list or something on this, right? Okay, cool. Other examples. So, or go talk to Leslie after this, and if you know a mother's group. Yeah.
I work in a soup kitchen once a month, and during the summer we have a lot of little kids that come in.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of low-income kids get their one meal of the day at schools, so
Yeah.
I'm worried about what happens to these kids during the summer when they can't depend on the school.
Yeah.
So I want to search out some kind of a volunteer program that provides lunches for low-income kids during the summer when they can't depend on the school.
Oh, I love it. And St. Anthony's and Monument Crisis Center, and just trying to find out what's the right partners to help support that. Is it a school, or is it the food support system? We have I have a girlfriend who started a company called Brandless, BRANDLESS. I know, isn't it amazing? Everything's $3, everything there. It's like a dollar store, but meets Procter & Gamble. And she is doing all these amazing things. She would love to donate to it and have, I'm sure, people on the ecosystem. So.
And I'm familiar with the Monument Crisis Center, so I think that's where I'm going to start.
Yeah, so once you write these things down, the key thing is to take your calendar this week, even if no one gets back to you tonight, and just start plotting weekly baby goals toward that for the next literally summer. And then you'll find yourself in September with actually this being a bigger portion of your time, or you actually having these big early wins. And I love the fact that you said, I started it, but then I didn't, but it's okay. Because that's how everything starts, right? You're like, oh, I have an idea, and then I ran out of time. Or I have an idea, but then it didn't happen. But the key is, and we have a lot of research to back this up, as you realize, oh my God, that is actually the start. It's not supposed to go like this. It's supposed to go like this. And so just committing to that for 3 or 4 months. Okay, the second thing is there's another tool that we often use that the students love, which are these 6-word stories. And just writing down the stories that have defined your life so far is a really powerful and very efficient exercise to do. My dad has a book called Creating Signature Stories, and it's more professionally focused on companies, but we find this to be very powerful at the individual level. So write down all of the stories that have defined your life so far, and you could think about it in terms of just 6 words, 6 words or less. In fact, Ernest Hemingway was once known to have written the first 6-word story. He wrote, "Baby shoes for sale, never worn." So we don't know if it's a couple who couldn't have a child or had a child but it died, but it illuminates the power of story. When you make the inference, you'll remember it more, versus if I just tell you there was a couple who couldn't have a child. And it also illuminates the power of brevity. So you can think about all of the stories that have defined your life where real change happened. And I'll give you a few examples of what my students say. Applying cool science to improve life experiences, or married the wrong girl, fixed it. It doesn't have to be sad. It could be funny and comical. And so, and it doesn't have to be like a full story. You could just jot down a couple words. But go back on your life, and you could think about it from when you were young to now, or every year, or every place you moved. Think of the stories. But I'm going to give you 30 seconds, and I'm going to have you write down as many stories as you can think. 6 words or less. Just jot them down, as many as you think. If you can't do it from like when you were young to when you were older, feel free to like think of your house you grew up in, and walk in the bathroom, and walk in the kitchen, and then walk in the living room, and remember what stories happen in each of those rooms. So you have 30 seconds, and write down all of the stories that you feel are very definitional. All right, so as you guys are finishing up, I'm going to have you do one more exercise. Look through all of the stories that you wrote down, and just see if there's any common themes that bubble up, like any common values or themes or through lines that bubble up across multiple stories. For me, for example, I found when I did this, like I have a surprising rebellious streak that like I did not know I had, but all of these stories, or a lot of them, had these like juxtapositions or kind of surprises that I would put myself into. Like I ran clubs, even though I don't look like I'm a club person, while I was getting my PhD at Stanford, and at nighttime I'd be a club runner, and at daytime I'd be a PhD student. I was really proud of that juxtaposition. All right, so does anyone have like a through line, or I don't know, a value that seems to come through in multiple stories? Roy?
Yes, one way I wrote it was discovered racism, hated it, ran away.
Discovered what?
Yeah.
Racism.
And then that's first of all a beautiful and powerful story. Do you feel like that was was that that hatred of racism, did that come through in multiple stories, or was that just a very definitional?
Hundreds.
Yeah.
Hundreds of stories.
That's fascinating, because that illuminates something that feels so visceral and core to you, and kind of often illuminates purpose for people. Did you have an example?
Yeah. My 6 words were summer camp, babies, travel the world. And the thread was they were each a scary leap.
Yeah. Yeah, and what would be so powerful is that, because those are 3 chapters, and we show that, there's obviously, you can have 10 chapters. Obviously, you can divide up your life into however many chapters as you want. But what was the inciting incident that led you to do that risky jump, right? Was there a moment that you're like, okay, I'm leaving the summer camp, or okay, I'm starting to travel. So that would be a fun exercise. Other examples, yeah.
Growing up poor made a valuable lesson.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, that clearly must have impacted a lot of your definitional stories in your life. Just that core. My dad's starting to talk about that as like these meta stories, these really important stories that then go on to shape all these other kind of future stories. So that little exercise, A, is really fast, very easy, and incredibly powerful. And I encourage you to go home and give it another 5 minutes and write it down. It's incredibly interesting what comes up, and you can, again, tackle it from lots of areas. All right, so those are 2 tools to help you give more insight on core purpose, legacy, your destination. Again, you guys don't really need this because half of you already was kind of born with it, but most do. So let's talk about the journey. This journey concept is often unclear and esoteric as well. What do you really need to pack on this journey, so to speak? And our argument is you need some secret weapons. You need a tribe of people to be on this hiker journey with, and a way of diffusing tension, because if you're playing at these higher levels of purpose and destination, you need a way of releasing this tension. And our argument is that humor is such a powerful superpower that impacts all 3 of these things, and it helps along the journey to the destination. So the key is, how do you balance this gravity with levity? For me, this was really important because after 1 year of trying to help actually 18 families who had a son or daughter or parent who had leukemia after we wrote this book, we lost 17 out of the 18. So it was a year for me while we were supporting that book that I was just flatlined. And I didn't have a lot of levity during that time. And yet, look at you guys. Like, look at Joyce, look at my mom, look at Jennifer, look at all of you. There's a levity about what you do. Now, it might be through mindfulness that you can get the distance away from death or something that feels tragic, but levity is obviously so core to hospice. I was here for the big anniversary 3 weeks ago, where people were celebrated, my mom included, for 35 years of service. And there was so much laughter and color and levity and hilarity. So how do you find that balance? So most people think that humor is fun and frivolous, and it is in some ways, but it also matters a lot. It has this outsized impact on how we live our lives, how nimble we are, how much we can actually be effective at that destination. It's this multiplier. It does multiple things. So it's a secret weapon. Dick Costolo, who was the CEO of Twitter, wrote, first full day at Twitter, COO tomorrow, task number 1, undermine CEO, consolidate that. And he became the CEO a year later. There's studies that show that individuals that demonstrate successful humor, meaning it doesn't offset others and it's authentic, people attribute them higher levels of competence and confidence and increased levels of status within organizations and families. It plays a fundamental role, obviously, in bonding relationships. But there's this big problem. What happens is we were really young as younger kids, but there's this huge global humor cliff. This is people who report smiling and laughing a lot yesterday, and you can see that it just plummets at around 23, 25, and it keeps going down. Now, good news is around 80 and 90, 95, it starts picking back up. But the question is, why is it just like plummet? How do we move the needle? And so we have like a few things. I'm teaching this humor series business class, and it's so fun, as you can imagine. One thing is finding your own funny, like not just what your style, but where are you funny? So I'm known as the least funny person in my 5-person family. But when we go on family sabbaticals, which are where we take our kids and we go move to New York for 4 months, or Australia for a couple months, or Stockholm most recently for a couple of months, there the kids are totally miserable because they're without their friends and sports, and they're really, really upset. And Andy and I think it's very funny because they have to hang out with us. They're in like miserable places that I picked, inadvertently. And then I really take that time to write in funny ways. And I kind of blow off work and I blow off all these things because it's the one time that I'm actually funny and I'm totally laughing at it. We literally this afternoon, we decided we're going to go to Berlin we're moving there for 2.5 weeks. Now, you probably think that's not moving, but I'm calling it moving because it's a family sabbatical, and then the kids will have to think that they moved there. And we literally just booked an Airbnb that who knows if it's going to be good. They look really wacky. But then we just booked for the last few nights a hotel called the Titanic, which I think is so funny. We're going to be set up for a total disaster, and I will write in funny ways. So just, that's one example. But just taking 30 seconds and writing down, think of the last time you really laughed hard. Was it a place? You could think of it when, like what channel was it on? Twitter, Instagram, in the meeting? Was it emailing someone? Was it calling someone? Like, when were you funny? How were you funny? Just when was the last time you laughed hard? Write that down. I don't see all of you writing. That must mean that you haven't laughed really hard for a little while. For those of you who have, when was it? What was it?
SNL and Stephen Colbert.
Oh my God, yes. Why are we not just watching that every single night? Prioritize, people.
It was my last phone conversation with my dearest friend. No matter what's going on in our lives, whether it's sad or, death or anything, we just are able to laugh together.
Yes, I love it. Yeah.
There's a YouTube that someone sent me that an actor was hired to get on a subway somewhere and start laughing.
Yeah.
And everybody, one person at a time, started joining him, and by the end, and watching it, I'm laughing.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is that more than any other emotion or physical expression of an emotion, it's social. There's a reason. I mean, even I watch SNL by myself and I'm kind of laughing, but I kind of feel like I'm with them. But it's so social. And so that's the second part, is who is your humor tribe? And how do you be more intentional around surrounding yourself with it? This is my bridge group, 10 women with whom I laugh hard, and we really prioritize going away. I was inspired by my mom's bridge group, who, when I was young, I saw her role modeling for me with this incredible bridge group, and they never played bridge. We don't play bridge. We laugh all the time. So just write down in 30 seconds, who are you funny with? Or where you're funny, or they're funny, or who appreciates your lame puns, your silly jokes. Write it down. All right, a few volunteers. Yeah.
Well, I challenge everyone to do this. When you have to sign a check, when you're in a receipt in a store, all I use is a smiley face and my initials. Yeah. Well, today, before I got here late, I was in Berkeley, and at the store when I did it, the young girl who did it, it was on an apple, and she turned around and she said, "Can I take your picture with that?" So a picture of me, and everyone in the whole store laughed.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
A smiley face makes everyone smile.
I love it. So you don't have a humor tribe, you have the world as your tribe with your smiley faces. Other people that you wrote down might be surprised or not.
Yeah, my brother-in-law just, we feed off of each other. When we're out to dinner, he with his wife and I with mine. They sort of want us to go to another table.
Yeah.
We're causing tears in each other's eyes. We just can't breathe sometimes. It's
oh
crazy.
my God, yeah. Forget your wife, just hang out with him. Yeah. Jennifer?
As most people in this room, unless you're brand new, know, I would vote for Joyce.
Joyce was friggin' voted class clown in her high school. She had a lead up on us all. Now we have to work toward that. And there's someone else that's so hilarious with Joyce here. Erin? No,
Susie Crandall.
Susie, that's right. Oh my God, every single word with these two. She was also voted class clown, so my class is more for the non-class clowns that are trying really hard. Yesterday, some of my students tried this joke. She didn't know she was going to do it, was really nervous, and she did it, and everyone erupted, and she said to me, "I finally know what it feels like to be an effective class clown." It was such a bizarre feeling. But the power of these individuals, especially to diffuse tension, and especially in high-powered situations where gravity really defines it, just can't be underscored enough. Great, so know who your humor tribe is, and make more time for them. And then, how do you unlock it in others? Then realize also, last and not least, that humor is this choice, that it's this filter through which we view the world. I mean, Joyce just views the world in this way that she doesn't even have to like translate it. It just comes across funny, and then she'll share it, you know, if she has time often. We have one study that actually asked individuals to do the same thing you guys did, write down all the stories that define your life, and then we asked them to just categorize each of them as, you know, dramas or tragedies or love stories or comedies. And as you might expect, there was a lot of negative emotion. And again, you know, short-lived tragedies and dramas are good things. They're fine. It's just that a lot of them, always defining your life, actually can create this filter through which you continue to see the world. Those individuals that disproportionately called their signature stories as comedies were not only happier, more satisfied and energetic, but they also reported even more meaning in their life, because a lot of these stories were actually very powerful or meaningful stories, but they found some levity in it. They found some humor in it, and so they were able to create that meaning. So I'm going to have you just take 30 seconds and look down at that first list of signature stories that you wrote and see if you could just rewrite one of them as a comedy. So take one that might have been written as a drama or a tragedy or whatever. And if it was a love story, you could write it as a rom-com. But just take one story and see if you could rewrite it as a comedy.
In 6 words or less?
Well, I'll give you a break. You can take 7 if you want. But yeah, it's faster, obviously, if you just kind of jot down a few words, 6 words or less. All right, did anyone manage to do that? Okay, hold on one second. I'm seeing if I'm gonna pull on someone I haven't heard from yet. All right.
Not that funny. So you want the first version and the second version?
Both.
Okay, had babies, never felt more needed. Second one, had babies, why didn't anyone warn us?
That's awesome. Anyone else share there too? Yeah.
First one, elevator in New Orleans, prayer answered. I met my husband. Next is stalker on elevator, fabulous future.
Oh my God! I need to have these pairs of stories. I'm sending you guys my email. I want all of these. If you guys were able to do a shift. One more volunteer. Those 2 are good. Okay, yeah.
Left home, forgot brush, wet hair.
Oh, that's was that the
Summer camp.
The summer camp. Oh my God, that's great. That's right. Okay, summer camp. Can you do the funny one more time, because I needed to anchor on it.
Left home, forgot brush, wet hair.
Oh, that is good. I love it. What about you?
It was moving to Colorado, and then the comedy was Siamese cats in Fort Denver.
Okay, fantastic. Some of these stories you're like, oh, tell me more. I want to know. And then other stories you're like, I get it. Like, I understand what happened to you. But these are really powerful levity reframes, and research shows that if you do it, then you start to see all of these other comedies happening in front of you. So you'll all have this new superpower, not just Joyce. And in sum, we wanted to argue that happiness is miserable, at least chasing happiness is, and that real success is anchored on this destination that's meaningful, and the journey with your humor tribe, and the lens through which you see life. And our hope is that this talk is just going to keep your pilot light on. Thank you. And I think there's a bunch of, we do this humor boot camp. Let's see if I have this. I'll give Jennifer this This is a boot camp that we ran a few weeks ago, or like a few months ago. But I'll give Jen the deck, and then you guys can have the PDF of it and share it if you want or anything. And then I also sent her these little videos. We didn't have time to show the videos, but you guys can see them. They're 4 minutes. They're really compelling behavioral research. You can show them to your kids and grandkids too. Cool. A few questions.
Jennifer, I have a question. What is the General Atlantic professor?
Oh, that's just my chair. So at most schools they have chairs for professors when you get full, and mine it happens to be the General Atlantic. So, you know, Steve Denning, Bill Ford, these guys that run General Atlantic decided to give Stanford a chair, and the chair was given to me.
Oh, so General Atlantic.
Yeah, it's a company.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
with private equity.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like life, is an attitude. Like,
Yeah.
it depends on your attitude. And it's just like something you said something about us being here and how we can laugh with the work that we do. But death isn't tragic.
Right.
Right? We all think that it's a gift and it's.
Yeah.
Right? So
Absolutely.
It's not, so of course we can laugh.
Right. Although you guys know this, like that attitude, that lens of death is not always well embraced by people because it does feel scary, and then other people aren't doing hospice, right? So you guys are a very unique bunch where you do have that attitude and understanding. You know, Mom often says that not only does she love hospice because of you guys, but she loves it because it's life affirming. You know, it's very life affirming, and I get that because I got to see it through her lens. But a lot of people don't. They don't have that view because they're not as close to it, so they don't absorb it that way. Yeah.
With your chair, do you get a desk?
What?
With your chair, do you get a desk?
Oh!
No,
Get it.
that's just an opener. But,
I like it. I like it.
What-
God, you
what-
guys are good.
What I want to say, every time I walk into the building, I am enthralled with the attitude that is here because of the work everyone here is doing, and I mean everyone, including staff and volunteers, in the building is always uplifting. And everyone is smiling, and everyone is talking on just a more joyous level. And it's just amazing to be able to be a part of that.
Yeah, it is so inspiring. It really is. I kept asking Mom if I could go do, because you have to have all this training, which makes sense, or at least some training. But I wish there was a way you guys could do little pop-up hospice things, We have this incredible thing my sisters put together called Open, where young kids can pick their own charity and exposure to it. And I was just really touched by your two ideas of how do you get more young kids exposed to this incredible, wonderful culture that you guys have here, or that opportunity. But so I agree, and I'm in awe.
I think gratitude, a sense of gratitude, is a huge contributor to a sense of happiness and well-being.
That's right, and that goes to that second thing on the happiness versus meaningfulness. Those individuals that are more self-oriented versus those that are other-oriented, and one of the key components of other-orientation is just being grateful.
Yeah.
Grateful for others, grateful for what you have, grateful for your parents, grateful for your siblings. Absolutely. Cool. All right, well, thank you so much.